He was 12 years old, covered in bruises, and walked straight into a biker clubhouse where most people wouldn't dare to enter. But he didn't ask for help, didn't beg for money. He asked for one thing that shocked everyone in that room. Can I work here? What happened next changed an entire town. The door groaned on rusty hinges, and every head in the Iron Wolves clubhouse turned toward the sound. Conversations died mid-sentence. Pool cues froze mid-strike. Someone killed the music. Standing in the doorway was a kid, maybe 12 or younger, drowning in a gray hoodie 2 sizes too big. His sneakers were held together with duct tape, the kind of repair job that spoke of necessity, not fashion. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets and his face was angled down, but not enough to hide the purple-yellow bruise spreading across his left cheekbone. "Wrong address, kid," someone called out from the back. A few others chuckled, already turning back to their beers and card games. But the boy didn't leave. He stepped inside, letting the door swing shut behind him with a heavy thud that felt too final for comfort. The clubhouse smelled like motor oil, stale coffee, and decades of cigarette smoke baked into the walls. The concrete floor was stained with grease, and God knew what else. This wasn't the kind of place most kids would think to visit. "I'm looking for work," the boy said, his voice steady but quiet. "After school, I can sweep floors, clean tools, organize parts, whatever needs doing." The laughter came then, louder this time. Griffin, a big man with a beard like steel wool, slapped his knee. "You hear that? Kid wants to join the crew." But Marcus wasn't laughing. The sergeant-at-arms sat in the corner, a mountain of a man with a shaved head and a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw, a souvenir from Fallujah. He'd seen a lot in his 48 years. Taught weapons handling to Marines, pulled friends out of burning Humvees, buried more brothers than he cared to count. And he learned to read people the way others read books. What he saw in this kid's face wasn't desperation, it was something harder. Determination wrapped around shame, held together with the kind of quiet strength that came from surviving things children shouldn't have to survive. Marcus stood, his boots heavy on the concrete. The room went quiet again. When the sergeant-at-arms moved, people paid attention. "What's your name?" Marcus's voice was gravel and whiskey. "Ethan." "Ethan what?" The boy hesitated. "Mitchell." "You live around here, Ethan Mitchell?" "Pine Street, the yellow house with the chain-link fence." Marcus knew that house. Foster home. The Andersons ran it. Frank and his wife Carol. The place had a reputation, though nothing official. Kids came and went. No one asked too many questions. "How old are you?" 12. I'll be 13 in March." Marcus walked closer and Ethan's shoulders tensed, but he didn't step back, didn't flinch. That told Marcus more than any words could. "That's a nasty bruise," Marcus said, nodding toward the boy's face. "I fell." "Off what?" "My bike." "You ride a bike to school?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Sometimes." "Where'd you fall? Street? Sidewalk? Gravel?" The boy's eyes flickered just for a second, and Marcus saw it, the calculation, the weighing of truth against consequence. "Does it matter?" Ethan's voice carried an edge now, thin and sharp. "Yeah," Marcus said quietly. "It does." The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut. The other bikers had stopped pretending not to listen. Even Griffin had set down his beer. Marcus made a decision. "Tell you what, I need to check the garage. See what kind of work we've actually got. You wait here. Don't touch anything. Don't talk to anyone. Just sit." He pointed to a battered couch near the window, the one with springs poking through and stuffing leaking out like old wounds. Ethan walked over and sat down, hands still in his pockets, eyes fixed on the floor. Marcus didn't go to the garage. He went to his phone. 2 hours passed. The clubhouse carried on around Ethan like he was furniture. Men came and went. Sarah, the club's cook, emerged from the kitchen with a sandwich and a Coke, setting them on the armrest beside him without a word. Ethan stared at them for 10 minutes before finally eating, slow and careful, like someone who learned not to waste food. When Marcus finally returned, the boy was exactly where he'd left him. Hadn't moved to the bathroom, hadn't asked questions, just waited. "All right, Ethan," Marcus said, crouching down so they were eye level. "Here's the deal. We've got work, sweeping, organizing, Cleaning tools, like you said. $10 an hour, 3 days a week after school. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. 2 hours each day. You show up on time, you work hard, you don't steal, and you don't lie. Ever. Can you do that? Ethan's eyes widened just a fraction, and Marcus saw something shift beneath the steel. He saw hope, fragile and uncertain, like something delicate finally daring to exist. Yes, sir. Good. We start Tuesday, 4 o'clock. Don't be late. Ethan stood, nodded once, and walked toward the door. His hand was on the handle when Marcus spoke again. Ethan, the boy turned. That bruise didn't come from a bike. It wasn't a question. Ethan's face went blank, that careful mass sliding back into place. Tuesday, Marcus repeated. 4 o'clock. The door closed behind him, and the clubhouse exhaled. What the hell was that about? Griffin asked. Marcus walked to the window, watching the small figure in the oversized hoodie disappear down the street, shoulders hunched against the cold. That, Marcus said quietly, was a kid asking for a lifeline, and we're damn well gonna throw him one. Ethan showed up Tuesday early, wearing the same hoodie and duct-tape sneakers. He stood outside the clubhouse door for a full minute before knocking, like he was giving himself one last chance to run. Marcus opened the door before the second knock. Punctual. Good. Come on. He led Ethan through the main room, quieter now in the afternoon light, and out back to the garage. The space was massive, big enough for 6 bikes and a truck, with tools hanging on pegboards that looked like they'd been organized by someone with military precision. The air tasted like gasoline and possibility. This is Wade, Marcus said, nodding toward a wiry man in his 40s, with forearms covered in faded tattoos and grease permanently embedded under his fingernails. Wade was bent over a Harley engine, hands moving with the confidence of someone who'd rebuilt 1,000 motors. Wade straightened, wiping his hands on a rag that might have once been white. He studied Ethan with sharp eyes that had seen too much hardship and not enough kindness. Kid's going to help with cleanup and organization, Marcus said. Show him what needs doing. Wade grunted. Broom's in the corner. Start there. When you're done, I'll show you how we sort parts. Marcus left them to it, and Ethan got to work. He swept like his life depended on it. Methodical, thorough, getting into corners that probably hadn't seen a broom in months. Wade pretended not to watch, but he noticed. The kid didn't cut corners, didn't complain. Just worked. After an hour, Wade called him over. You know anything about engines? No, sir. Stop calling me sir. Makes me feel old. Wade pulled out a cardboard box filled with bolts, washers, and various metal pieces. These are engine components. They got mixed up when Griffin knocked over 3 boxes like a damn elephant. I need them sorted by size and type. Bolts with bolts, washers with washers. Think you can handle that? Ethan nodded and sat cross-legged on the concrete floor, dumping the box out in front of him. Wade went back to the Harley but kept one eye on the kid. What he saw surprised him. Ethan didn't just sort. He organized, created little rows, lined things up by size with the kind of precision that spoke of a mind that craved order in a chaotic world. After 20 minutes, Wade walked over and found the parts arranged better than he could have done himself. You're good with your hands, Wade said, and something in his voice was softer than before. Ethan looked up, and for a half second his guard dropped. My dad used to fix cars. Before. Before what? The guard slammed back up. Before he left. Wade knew better than to push. He'd learned the hard way that some stories came out in their own time, if at all, and that patience meant more than prying. Well, Wade said, if you want, I can teach you some basics. How engines work. How to strip them down and build them back up. Might be useful someday. Ethan's eyes lit up like someone had flipped a switch. Really? Yeah, but only if you keep showing up and working hard. I will, I promise. The door to the garage banged open and Tommy walked in. A bear of a man in his 60s with a white beard and a leather vest decorated with patches that told stories of decades on the road. He'd been the club's VP until his son died 8 years ago. Overdose. Though the real killer had been a foster system that bounced the kid through 7 homes in 4 years until he stopped believing anyone would catch him when he fell. Tommy had heard about Ethan. Hurt enough to make old wounds ache. Marcus says you walk home down Pine Street, Tommy said without preamble. Ethan stood up fast, shoulders tense. Yes, sir. I'm headed that way. I'll walk with you. You don't have to. Didn't ask if I had to. Tommy's voice was gentle but firm. Grab your stuff. They walked in silence for 2 blocks, Tommy's boots heavy against Ethan's quiet steps. You like working at the garage? Tommy asked finally. Yeah, Wade's teaching me about engines. Wade's good people. Rough around the edges, but solid. Tommy paused. How's school? Fine. You got friends there? Ethan shrugged, which was answer enough. They turned onto Pine Street, and Ethan's pace slowed. The yellow house was 4 down, its chain-link fence rusted and leaning. Through the window, Tommy could see movement. A large man pacing back and forth, agitated. That's your place? Tommy already knew the answer. Yeah. Who's inside? Frank, my foster dad. He home a lot? Ethan's jaw clenched. Sometimes. Tommy watched the boy's body language change as they got closer. Shoulders curling inward, head dropping, hands disappearing into pockets like he was trying to make himself smaller. Ethan, Tommy said quietly, stopping a house away, if things ever get bad, I mean really bad, you call this number. He pulled out a business card with the garage's phone number written on it. Day or night, someone will answer, understand? Ethan took the card, staring at it like it was a foreign object. Why are you doing this? Tommy's throat tightened. He'd watched someone drown once while the world looked away. He wouldn't let it happen again. Because you asked for work instead of a handout, Tommy said instead. That takes guts, and people with guts deserve people who've got their back. Ethan nodded slowly, tucking the card deep into his pocket. Thank you. See you Thursday, kid. Tommy waited until Ethan was inside before walking away, his hands curled into fists. He pulled out his phone and called Marcus. It's worse than we thought, Tommy said when Marcus answered. That house feels wrong, and the kid's terrified of going inside. I know, Marcus said. I've already made some calls. We're going to document everything. Times, dates, visible injuries. Build a case. And if that's not fast enough, Marcus's voice went cold and hard, then we handle it our way. 3 weeks in, and Ethan had become part of the garage's rhythm. He showed up early, stayed late when allowed, and absorbed everything Wade taught him like a sponge. His hands had earned new calluses, and there was something different in his eyes now. Not quite hope, but maybe its distant cousin. Thursday evening, Ethan was elbow-deep in sorting carburetor parts when the clubhouse door slammed open hard enough to rattle the windows. Heavy footsteps echoed through the main room, followed by a voice that made Ethan's whole body go rigid. Where is he? Where's the kid? Frank Anderson stood in the doorway between the clubhouse and garage, 6'2", 220, with a drinker's broken capillaries across his nose and rage simmering in bloodshot eyes. His work shirt was untucked, stained with something that might have been mustard or might have been worse. Wade stepped in front of Ethan instinctively, wrench still in hand. Can I help you? You can mind your own damn business, Frank snarled. That's my foster kid, and he's coming home now. Ethan hadn't moved, couldn't move. His breathing had gone shallow and quick. Marcus emerged from the office, moving with the deliberate calm of someone who'd faced down worse threats than an angry drunk. Mr. Anderson, Ethan's work shift ends at 6. It's 5:30. He'll be home when his time's done. I don't give a rat's ass about his shift. He's got chores. I didn't give him permission to be here. Actually, Marcus said, voice level and cold, his caseworker signed off on the work program. I've got the paperwork if you'd like to see it. That was a lie. There was no paperwork. But Frank didn't know that, and the confidence in Marcus's voice made him hesitate. This is, Frank spat. You people think you can just take in strays, fill his head with ideas. He's got responsibilities. What kind of responsibilities? Marcus asked, taking one step forward. Specifically, Frank's face flushed darker. That's between me and the kid. Is it? Marcus took another step. Behind him, Griffin and 2 other bikers had materialized from the clubhouse, forming a wall of leather and muscle. Because from where I stand, Ethan shows up here with fresh bruises every few days. His caseworker hasn't visited in 3 months, and he flinches every time someone raises their voice. So I'm real curious about these responsibilities. Frank's hands curled into fists, but even drunk and angry, he could count. 5 men stood united behind Marcus, whose calm military bearing spoke louder than any threat. You don't know what you're talking about, Frank said, but the fire was guttering out. Kid's clumsy, falls down, and maybe if he wasn't such a screw-up, I wouldn't have to. He caught himself, jaw snapping shut. Wouldn't have to what? Marcus's voice could have cut glass. Frank pointed at Ethan. You, home, 1 hour. Don't make me come back. He turned and stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to make the frame shudder. The garage stayed silent. Ethan stared at his trembling hands. Wade crouched down beside him. Hey, you're okay. He's gone. I should go, Ethan whispered. If I'm not home. Not yet. Marcus pulled out his phone. Tommy, get over here. Now. 20 minutes later, Tommy walked Ethan home again. But this time, Diesel followed on his bike, circling the block slowly, making his presence known. When they reached the yellow house, Frank was visible through the window, pacing and drinking from a bottle. You don't have to go in, Tommy said quietly. I do. If I don't, he'll call the caseworker, say I ran away. Then I go to a group home, and those are worse. How do you know that? Because I've been in 3 of them. Ethan's voice was flat, emotionless, reciting facts. This is number 4. After this, they stop trying to place you. You just cycle through until you age out. Something cracked inside Tommy's chest. Kid, it's fine. I'm used to it. Ethan managed a weak smile that was somehow worse than tears. Thanks for the job. It's been good. He walked to the door and Tommy had to physically stop himself from grabbing the boy and putting him on the back of his bike. But kidnapping didn't help anyone. There were rules, procedures, systems that had failed his own son, systems that were failing Ethan. Tommy called Marcus the moment Ethan was inside. We're out of time. That bastard's going to hurt him bad. And soon. I know. Meet me at Sarah's Diner. Sarah's Diner was a hole in the wall on the edge of town, the kind that served breakfast all day. She'd been feeding the Iron Wolves for 15 years. She poured coffee before they even sat down. Heard about the foster kid. How bad is it? Bad, Marcus said. We need to move fast, but legal. I've got a friend at Child Protective Services, but she needs evidence. Documentation, something concrete. Sarah nodded slowly, thinking. What's the kid's last name again? Mitchell. Ethan Mitchell. She disappeared into the back and returned 5 minutes later with a dusty cardboard box. I was going through old employee records last month. Tax stuff. Found something weird. She pulled out a file with a name written on the tab. Rebecca Mitchell. She worked here 20 years ago. Waitress, sweet girl, barely 20, got pregnant, had a baby boy, kept working for about 6 months after he was born. Then, she snapped her fingers. Gone. Never came back. Never picked up her last check. I called the police, but they said she probably just moved on. Single mom, no family. Happens all the time. Marcus's blood went cold. You remember the baby's name? I don't, but I remember she had a photo. Kept it in her locker. Let me check if... Sarah rummaged through the box and pulled out a small, faded Polaroid. A young woman with Ethan's eyes holding an infant wrapped in a blue blanket. On the back, in looping handwriting, Ethan, 4 months, my whole world. Jesus, Tommy breathed. Marcus pulled out his phone and took a picture of the Polaroid. Sarah, I need copies of everything. Employment records, dates, anything about when she disappeared. You think something happened to her? I think, Marcus said slowly, that there's a reason nobody looked very hard when she vanished. And I think we're about to find out why. Outside, Diesel's engine rumbled past, still circling, still watching the yellow house on Pine Street, still making sure that tonight, at least, Ethan wouldn't face the dark alone. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Marcus's contact at CPS, a sharp-eyed woman named Martinez who owed him a favor from his Marine Corps days, fast-tracked Ethan's case the moment she saw the photographs Tommy had been quietly documenting. Fresh bruises appearing with alarming regularity. The way Ethan held his left arm close to his body on Tuesday. The split lip that hadn't been there on Thursday. But it was Rebecca Mitchell's disappearance that broke everything open. Sarah's employee records gave them dates. Marcus's lawyer friend found the original missing persons report, filed by the diner, closed within 48 hours with a 2-sentence conclusion, subject likely relocated voluntarily. No evidence of foul play. No one had interviewed neighbors. No one had checked with the hospital where Ethan was born. No one had asked why a devoted mother would abandon her 4-month-old son without taking a single possession. Martinez dug deeper and found Ethan's intake paperwork. Frank had claimed he'd found the baby abandoned at a gas station. The social worker called him a good Samaritan, willing to foster. Frank had been Ethan's only foster parent for 12 years, moving from county to county, always staying just under the radar, always with glowing initial reports that deteriorated into nothing. "He's been trafficking that kid through the system," Martinez told Marcus, her voice shaking with rage. "Collecting checks, moving before anyone investigates too closely. And Rebecca Mitchell didn't disappear. Someone made her disappear." "I'd bet my career Frank knows exactly what happened." The emergency hearing was set for Friday morning. Ethan had no idea. He showed up at the garage Thursday like always, quieter than usual, moving stiffly. Wade pretended not to notice the way the kid winced when he bent down. "You good?" Wade asked, keeping his tone casual. "Yeah, just slept wrong." Wade's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Listen, tomorrow you've got the day off. Something came up." "Did I do something wrong?" "No, kid. Opposite. Just trust us, okay?" "Okay." That night, Tommy didn't just walk Ethan home. He walked him to the yellow house, waited until Frank answered the door and said clearly, "I'll be here tomorrow morning at 7. Ethan's got an appointment." Frank's eyes narrowed. "What kind of appointment?" "The kind that's none of your business. He'll be back when it's done." For a moment, it looked like Frank might argue, but Diesel's motorcycle was idling at the curb, and Griffin's truck was parked across the street, and Frank was smart enough, or drunk enough, to recognize a losing hand. "Whatever," he muttered, yanking Ethan inside. Tommy's hands shook the entire ride back to the clubhouse. Friday arrived cold and bright. Tommy picked Ethan up at 7 sharp, Frank watching from the porch with eyes like flint. Ethan climbed onto the back of Tommy's bike wearing the same hoodie, the same duct-taped sneakers, confusion written all over his face. "Where are we going?" "Courthouse. There's someone who needs to talk to you." Ethan went rigid. "About what?" "About whether you want to keep living in that house." The silence stretched for 3 blocks before Ethan spoke again, voice barely audible over the engine. "Do I have a choice?" "Yeah, kid. For the first time, you do." The hearing felt endless. Martinez presented evidence. Photographs, medical records from school visits, testimony from teachers who'd seen things but never reported them. Frank's lawyer tried to fight back but crumbled when Martinez dropped the file about Rebecca Mitchell on the table. "Your client was the last person to see this woman alive," Martinez said coldly. "And somehow, 6 months later, he magically found her infant son abandoned at a gas station. I'm recommending a criminal investigation, and until that's resolved, Ethan Mitchell is being removed from his custody immediately." Ethan testified for 15 minutes. Calm, clear, honest. When the judge asked him where he wanted to go, Ethan looked at Tommy sitting in the back row and said, "With them, the Iron Wolves. They're the only ones who ever gave me a choice." The judge, a woman in her 60s who'd presided over too many broken kids, granted emergency temporary guardianship to Thomas "Tommy" Sullivan, pending background checks and home evaluation. Frank was escorted out by 2 bailiffs, screaming about rights and lawyers. Ethan didn't look back once. The clubhouse threw together a bedroom in 2 days, cleared out the storage room, painted the walls, installed a solid bed. Sarah bought motorcycle sheets. Wade hung a pegboard. Diesel brought a desk. By Sunday, Ethan had a space. Not much, but his. That evening, the club gathered in the main room. Ethan stood awkwardly in the center, still not quite believing any of this was real. Marcus raised a beer. "To the kid who walked into a biker clubhouse asking for work. You got guts, Ethan Mitchell, and now you've got family." "To family," the room echoed. Ethan tried to speak, couldn't. Something hot and unfamiliar burned behind his eyes. Later, Tommy found him on the front steps, staring at the stars. "You okay?" Ethan thought about it. Really thought. "My mom. Do you think we'll ever find out what happened?" "I don't know," Tommy said honestly. "But we're going to try. And whatever we find, you won't face it alone." Ethan leaned against Tommy's shoulder, a gesture that would have been impossible weeks ago. "Thank you for seeing me." Tommy's throat closed up. "Thank you for being brave enough to walk through that door." Inside, Ethan's homework was pinned to the corkboard next to the week's ride schedule. His drawings, careful sketches of motorcycles, were taped to the fridge. In the garage, Wade had labeled a toolbox with Ethan's name. The system hadn't saved him. A caseworker hadn't saved him. The school hadn't saved him. A kid asking for work and a group of broken men choosing to be better. That's what saved him. And sometimes that's exactly how family is born. Ethan didn't need heroes. He needed someone to see him. And sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into. What would you do if a kid walked into your life asking for a chance? Drop your thoughts below. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Don't forget to subscribe to Endless Stories for more stories that prove kindness can change everything. See you in the next video.